You have a pretty unorthodox swing with a very steep takeaway, and then you drop your hands down. There are some pros who are like that. I mean, famously Matt Wolf and like Jim Furyk. So you look, if that works for you, I don't want to tell you to change it, but I would definitely consider a more neutral swing. Just to, I don't know if you came to this swing naturally or if you've purposely been trying to swing like this. I don't really know your history, but before we get to that, I just want to talk about your posture really quick. You look a little bit like scrunched up here. Like all of this just looks really tight. And you look a little hunched over. So what I would do is your arms are kind of hanging a little bit this way. And generally you want your arms to hang straight down. So I think by you just kind of like, if you just kind of let your hands hang loose and let gravity drop it, it'll kind of show you where they want to go. Because your knee flex is pretty good. But if your hands drop straight down, what would happen is now the club length, you know, it would be over here, which is past the ball. So it would force your spine to go up a little bit, if that makes sense. So like your spine would go there, your hands would be more forward, but they would also be a little bit higher up. And so your spine and everything, you'd also just create more distance here for your hands, between your hands and your crotch. I think that's generally what I would do, is just let gravity drop your hands down, see where that feels comfortable, and just grab that and then kind of adjust from there. And just, if you look at it on video, like your hand, you have like no space here. And I would try to have a little more space. So let me just compare you. So like here's Tommy Fleetwood. You can see the arms hanging down, if not a little bit more forward. He's got a little more space here. It looks like he's actually choking down on the club too, so it looks like it's more crowded than it even is. Here's Viktor Hovland. Again, you see his hands are actually a little bit forward. And plenty of space there. Just to compare it, and just the angle of the spine, yours is very like, yours is like that. You see that they're just a little more upright, they look a little more athletic. So as far as your backswing, the key you know, checkpoints are right here when the club is like parallel to the ground. Usually what you'll see is players have that club head around their hands, maybe a little in front. Yours is over here, so it would be called a steep takeaway. Something like this would be a very shallow takeaway, this is more steep. And then as you get to this position with the arm parallel to the ground, another guideline there is having the club point at the ball, meaning the shaft is kind of like that. Yours is pointing pretty much straight down, so it's very steep. And then here at this point at the top, usually you want this arm covering that right shoulder, so like, you know, like right around there. Yours is a little high, and like I said, there's plenty of pros who have swings like this, so it might work for you. And then on the way down, you do drop and get closer to a more neutral downswing. You're still a little steep there. You know, you're not like pointing right at the ball. And so I think because of that, your hips kind of come out. Let me just show you your early extension. Here's your butt. As you come down, you see your butt moves away from that line. I think part of that is because you're so steep that you're going to hit the ground, so you kind of have to move forward. But a lot of that might, even the setup change alone is going to change some of these angles. So you kind of take one thing at a time. Like if you were to, for example, try to at this point have your hands, the club head right there, that would probably change the rest of the swing. You wouldn't have to think about anything else. Or if at this point you just tried to have the club facing, you know, facing the ball. Or sorry, the butt of the club facing the ball. There's lots of ways to do it. If at this point you try to have that arm a little bit lower, you know, which would make this elbow go a little bit lower, like that, you know. Obviously, if everything here would just go down if you lower that lead arm. So there's lots of different ways to think about it, lots of different ways to achieve it. You don't have to think about the thing the whole way through. But in the end, you'd have a more neutral takeaway. Now, what I do want to point out is that there are players. Let me go back, I think. Okay, I already had Viktor Hovland loaded up. Look at his backswing. You see at the top, he's pretty steep, right? His club head is pointing almost straight down, right? He has a pretty steep backswing, but of course, you know, then he drops it down. And you can see as he's coming down, look where the club is pointed at. It's pointed at actually a little bit past the ball. So he's really shallowing it, which is something that you're not necessarily doing. You're going steep, but you're not going fully shallow. The other thing is that as he comes back, look where the club head is relative to the hands. So he's not doing a very steep takeaway. He's kind of just doing a pretty neutral takeaway, but with the club pointed more vertical. Like even the arm and the shoulder we were talking about. Let me compare them to you. See, his arm actually looks a little bit lower than yours, like it's covering his shoulder a little more. Just the angle itself is smaller than yours. So he can achieve a pretty steep backswing and then shallow it without necessarily having a steep takeaway and a steep position at the top either. So you can kind of achieve, if you really like this feeling of kind of going up and then down, you can still achieve that with a more neutral takeaway. The main reason to stay neutral is just everything's easier to control. The swing is more efficient, so it's just easier to like get speed, you know, get accuracy, all this stuff without having to, like this movement going from there all the way to there. It's like a lot of stuff has to move. Your shoulders, your arms, your hips all have to kind of move to drop those hands. So if you're just not so extreme with your takeaway and your backswing, it just makes it easier to get in the right position in the backswing and the downswing. A lot of these pros work really hard to like have unorthodox swings. But I think for most people, having a more neutral swing would help. So if you want to mess around with that, this would be the checkpoint. Try to get the club around the hands there. Try to get the butt of the club facing the ball, and maybe think about lowering this arm to about, like, you know, over the shoulder. You don't want to be too low either. And then just see how that affects everything else. And the stance, like I was saying, getting a little less crowded here, maybe being a little more upright. You can try flexing your knees a little more, because like one rule is that your shins should kind of be like leaning forward. Yours are kind of straight up. Like you do have some knee bend, but maybe, you know, leaning your shins more forward. Let me compare you. I haven't looked at this on Victor Hovland, but I'm gonna bet, because most pros have that. You see his shins just have a little bit of forward lean to it. Yours are, you know, they're pretty much straight up. So you might consider a little more forward there, a little more up. Just that's kind of the main shape you want. Whereas yours is a little more like that. It's just a little more crowded, a little less athletic. That I would definitely do, because you won't see pros who stand like you stand. The other stuff is swings are very personal, you know, but I would just try the more neutral stuff just to see what it feels like and if it affects your game at all.